Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. The old shed at the bottom of the garden had been bothering me for years. It wasn't just an eyesore, slumped against the back fence like a tired old man. It represented something more. A project Mark, my husband, had sworn he'd get to one day. Well, one day had stretched into 5 years, punctuated by half-hearted attempts, abandoned tools, and the slow creep of ivy that threatened to swallow it whole. Mark meant well. He always did, but life, his job, his golf weekends, they always seemed to get in the way. I understood. Truly I did. But seeing that shed, tilting ever more precariously, just chipped away at my peace. It felt like a visual metaphor for things left undone, promises gathering dust. This spring, though, I decided enough was enough. I wanted that space back. I envisioned a little potting shed, maybe a quiet place to read, surrounded by the scent of earth and blossoms instead of decay. Mark, bless his heart, just sighed when I brought it up again, mumbled something about contractor costs, and promptly forgot. That's when the idea struck me, hesitant at first, but growing firmer the more I considered it. Uncle George. George was Mark's uncle, his father's younger brother, a retired carpenter, widower, and generally quiet man. He lived about 30 minutes away in the house he'd shared with his late wife, Martha. He was always kind, with gentle eyes and hands that still held the quiet strength and competence of his trade. We didn't see him often. Holidays, the occasional family barbecue, but there was a warmth about him, a steadiness that I always found comforting. Mark respected him immensely, but like many men, their conversations rarely strayed beyond sports or surface-level updates. Asking George for help felt complicated. It wasn't just asking a favor. It felt like highlighting Mark's inaction, potentially stepping on toes. Would George think I was complaining about his nephew? Would Mark feel undermined? I chewed on the idea for a week, weighing the potential awkwardness against my growing determination to reclaim that patch of garden. Finally, I decided to call George directly. I figured a direct, honest approach was best. Maybe I'd frame it as wanting to learn, wanting to tackle it myself, but needing guidance. I rehearsed the conversation in my head, dialing his number one Tuesday morning with a flutter of nerves. He answered on the third ring, his voice calm and familiar. "George? Hi, it's Sarah." There was a slight pause, perhaps surprise. "Sarah, how lovely to hear from you. Is everything all right?" "Oh yes, everything's fine, George, really." I hastened to assure him. I was actually calling to ask. Well, it might be a bit cheeky, but I wanted to ask for your advice, or maybe even some help if you ever have the time. I explained about the shed, my desire to fix it up, my vision for a small haven. I carefully avoided mentioning Mark's prolonged procrastination, focusing instead on my own desire to get the project done. Maybe even learn a few things myself. I emphasized that I didn't want to impose, that even just pointing me in the right direction would be wonderful. George listened patiently, the silence on his end punctuated only by his soft breathing. When I finished, my words tumbling out a bit faster than intended, he didn't answer immediately. I held my breath, suddenly convinced I'd made a mistake. Had I offended him? Put him in an awkward position? "A potting shed, you say?" He finally mused, his voice thoughtful. "Martha always wanted one of those. Never quite got around to building it for her." There was a touch of melancholy in his tone that tugged at my heart. "It sounds like a fine project. Sarah, a worthy one." He paused again. "Tell you what, I've got some free time this week. How about I come over Thursday morning? Take a look, and we can figure out a plan. No promises I can do the whole thing, mind you, but I can certainly assess the damage and maybe show you how to tackle the worst of it. Relief washed over me, so potent it almost made me dizzy. Oh, George, that would be absolutely wonderful. Thank you. Are you sure it's not too much trouble? Nonsense, he replied, a hint of warmth returning to his voice. Keeps me busy. See you Thursday, say 9-ish. We said our goodbyes, and I hung up the phone with a sense of accomplishment mixed with a lingering trace of apprehension. I told Mark that evening, framing it carefully. I called George today, asked his advice about the shed. He offered to come take a look on Thursday. Mark looked up from his tablet, surprised. Uncle George? Really? Huh. Okay. Just don't let him overdo it. Sarah, he's not as young as he used to be. There wasn't any annoyance, just mild surprise, and perhaps a flicker of relief that the shed problem might be solved without his direct involvement. The first hurdle was cleared. Now, I just had to wait for Thursday. Thursday morning dawned bright and clear, one of those perfect late spring days where the air feels fresh and full of promise. I was up early, tidying the garden path, making sure the access to the shed was clear. I even baked a batch of scones. George had always praised my baking at family gatherings. It felt important to make him feel welcome, appreciated. At precisely 9 o'clock, his sturdy, slightly old-fashioned pickup truck pulled into the driveway. George climbed out, dressed in practical work trousers and a checked shirt, carrying a small, worn leather toolbox. He moved with a deliberate slowness that wasn't frail, just measured. His gray hair was neatly combed, and those kind eyes surveyed the house, the garden, and finally me, waiting by the back door. "Morning, Sarah," he greeted me with a gentle smile. "Lovely day for it." "It is, isn't it? Thanks so much again for coming, George." "Coffee? I've just made a fresh pot, and there are scones." "Don't mind if I do," he said, following me inside. We sat at the kitchen table, the morning sun streaming through the window, illuminating the steam rising from our mugs. We talked easily, more easily than I had anticipated. He asked about the kids, though they were long grown and out of the house. I asked about his garden, knowing it was his pride and joy since Martha passed. There was no awkwardness, just a comfortable rhythm. He ate 2 scones, declaring them the best he'd had in ages, which made me ridiculously pleased. After coffee, we headed out to the garden towards the dilapidated shed. George walked around it slowly, tapping the wood here and there, peering at the sagging roofline, testing the rotten doorframe with the toe of his boot. He didn't say much, just made small humming sounds, his brow furrowed in concentration. I hovered nearby, trying not to crowd him, feeling a strange mix of hope and embarrassment at the state of the structure. Finally, he turned to me. "Well," he said, rubbing his chin, "she's seen better days, that's for sure. The main frame seems surprisingly solid in places, though good bones underneath the rot." He pointed out warped planks, areas where water had clearly seeped in, the precarious lean of the whole structure. "It's a bigger job than just patching up, Sarah. To do it right, you'd need to replace this whole front section, sister up some of these joists, probably redo the roof." He looked at me, his gaze direct but kind. "It's doable, but it'll take time and effort." My heart sank slightly. It sounded like more than I could handle alone, and certainly more than I could ask of him. "Oh," I said, trying to keep the disappointment out of my voice. "I see. Maybe it's best to just tear it down after all." George shook his head gently. No, didn't say that. Just needs a proper approach. "Tell you what," he said, leaning against a relatively stable section of the wall. "I've got time on my hands." And frankly, he smiled wryly. "My own garden is getting tired of me fussing over it. How about this? We tackle it together. I can show you what needs doing, guide you. We can take it slow, a few mornings a week. It'll give me something useful to do, and you'll get your potting shed. I stared at him, surprised by the generosity of the offer. George, are you absolutely sure? That's incredibly kind, but it's a huge commitment. I don't want to take advantage. He waved a hand dismissively. Nonsense. It'll be good for me. Good for us both. Maybe. Learn some new skills. He grinned, and the sincerity in his eyes was undeniable. Besides, he added quietly, looking back at the shed, I think Martha would have liked the idea. Building something useful, something beautiful, instead of letting things fall apart. That sealed it for me. The shared purpose, the connection to his late wife, the unexpected camaraderie. It felt right. Okay, George, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Okay, let's do it. Thank you. He simply nodded, a quiet satisfaction settling on his face. Right then, let's make a list of materials we'll need to start. And just like that, standing beside the crumbling shed under the bright spring sky, an unexpected partnership began. The next few weeks settled into a comfortable routine. George would arrive around 9, usually Tuesdays and Thursdays. We'd start with coffee in the kitchen, chatting about everything and nothing. The weather, his prize-winning roses, a book I was reading, snippets of news. Sometimes Mark would be there, heading off to work, and he'd exchange pleasantries with George. A quick, morning, Uncle George, don't work too hard, before disappearing. Mark seemed content with the arrangement, perhaps even slightly relieved the shed was finally being addressed without demanding his own time. After coffee, we'd head out to the shed. The first step was demolition, carefully removing the rotten wood, clearing away the years of accumulated debris, old broken pots, rusted tools, things I hadn't even known were in there. George was methodical, patient, explaining every step. He showed me how to use a pry bar effectively, how to identify salvageable timber, how to stack the waste wood neatly for disposal. He never rushed, never got frustrated, even when I was clumsy or slow. There was a quiet satisfaction in the physical work, in seeing the shed slowly stripped back to its essential structure. The air filled with the scent of damp earth, decaying wood, and occasionally the sharp tang of sawdust as George made precise cuts with his handsaw. He brought his own tools, treasures worn smooth with years of use, and he showed me how to care for them. Handing me a beautifully balanced old hammer, he said, "Feel that? Good tools make the work easier. Respect them, and they'll serve you well." I learned to swing the hammer properly, drive nails straight, measure accurately. My hands, usually busy with keyboards or cooking, grew tougher, acquiring small scratches and the occasional blister, which I wore with a strange sense of pride. We worked side by side, often in comfortable silence, the only sounds the scrape of tools, the chirping of birds, the occasional instruction from George. But the silences weren't empty. They were filled with a growing sense of companionship, a shared understanding built through common effort. Sometimes as we worked, we talked more deeply. He told me stories about his apprenticeship as a young man, the intricate pieces he used to build, the satisfaction of creating something lasting. He spoke about Martha, not with overwhelming sadness, but with a gentle fondness, sharing anecdotes about her laugh, her love for gardening, their quiet life together. Hearing him speak about her, I felt I got to know her a little, and I saw the shape of her absence in his life, a space filled now with routine and memory. In turn, I found myself opening up to him in ways I rarely did with others, not even Mark sometimes. I talked about my frustrations with the kids occasionally taking me for granted, my feeling of restlessness now they were grown, my quiet yearning for something more, though I wasn't sure what that more was. George was an exceptional listener. He didn't offer easy platitudes or unwanted advice. He just listened, really listened, his gaze thoughtful, occasionally nodding or asking a gentle question that showed he understood. "It happens," he said one afternoon, after I'd confessed to feeling a bit invisible lately. "Life changes shape around you. The trick is to find your own shape within it again." One particularly warm Thursday, we were replacing the main support beams for the front wall. It was heavy work, requiring careful measurement and maneuvering. George directed me, his voice calm and steady, as we positioned a new, solid piece of timber. "All right, Sarah, ease it down. Slowly, that's it. Hold it steady now." We worked together, breathing a little harder, focused entirely on the task. When the beam slid perfectly into place, a sense of shared accomplishment pulsed between us. "Perfect!" George breathed out, wiping a bead of sweat from his temple with the back of his hand. He looked at me and smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. "You're getting good at this, you know?" I felt a flush of pleasure, disproportionate perhaps to the compliment, but it felt earned. "Only because I have a good teacher," I replied, smiling back. In that moment, leaning against the sturdy new frame, surrounded by the tools and the scent of fresh cut wood, I felt a connection to George that was surprisingly deep. It wasn't romantic, not in the slightest, but it was intimate in its own way, a closeness forged in shared work, mutual respect, and unexpected vulnerability. He saw me not just as Mark's wife, but as Sarah, a person capable of learning, contributing, someone worth teaching and talking to. And I saw him not just as an elderly uncle, but as George, a man of quiet strength, wisdom, and a gentle heart still capable of connection. The shed was slowly transforming, but so I realized was I. As spring deepened into early summer, the shed project took on a life of its own. The rotten front wall was gone, replaced by sturdy new framing. George had shown me how to install window frames, salvaged ones he'd found at a reclamation yard, full of character, and we were starting to put up the siding. We'd settled into a rhythm not just of work, but of companionship. Our coffee chats stretched longer some mornings. George would bring vegetables from his garden, plump tomatoes, crisp lettuce, and I'd send him home with portions of whatever I'd been baking or cooking. Mark seemed pleased with the progress, commenting on how solid the shed looked now, but he remained largely peripheral to the actual process. It was mine and George's project. One Tuesday, Mark had a rare day off. He wandered out to the garden while George and I were measuring planks for the siding. "Looking good," Mark said, surveying our handiwork. "You two make quite the team." He clapped George on the shoulder. "Thanks for helping Sarah out, Uncle George. I owe you one." George just smiled modestly. "Sarah's doing most of the work. She's a natural." Mark lingered for a few minutes, watching us, but he seemed slightly out of place, an observer rather than a participant in the quiet energy we had created. He soon retreated back inside, leaving George and me to our measurements and saws. It was during these weeks that the emotional depth of our connection truly began to reveal itself, catching me slightly off guard. It wasn't anything overt, just small moments. Like the time I struggled to lift a particularly heavy piece of plywood, and George came up beside me, not taking over, but positioning himself so we could lift it together. His quiet, ready, lift on 3, making the task manageable. Or the afternoon it started to rain unexpectedly, a sudden summer shower. We quickly covered the tools and timber and dashed into the partially rebuilt shed, the scent of rain on dry earth filling the air. We stood there, side by side, watching the downpour, the drumming on the temporary roof covering, creating a cozy, enclosed world. We didn't speak for several minutes, just listened to the rain. Then George said softly, "Martha loved the rain. Used to say it was the earth sighing." He turned to me, a wistful look in his eyes. "It's good, sharing this, Sarah, building something again." There was an unspoken layer to his words, a sense of purpose rediscovered, perhaps, that resonated deeply within me. I felt a profound sense of empathy for him, for his loss, but also a shared sense of discovery in the present moment. The subtle tension wasn't between George and me, but within myself. I found myself looking forward to Tuesdays and Thursdays with an eagerness that surprised me. It wasn't just the shed. It was the conversation, the shared purpose, the feeling of being seen and valued in a way that felt new. I felt guilty sometimes, wondering if my enjoyment of George's company was somehow disloyal to Mark. But Mark seemed genuinely untroubled, happy even that the shed was handled and that his uncle had something to occupy his time. My connection with George felt pure, rooted in respect and the simple joy of creation. There was no flirtation, no inappropriate undertones, just a deep, burgeoning friendship that defied easy categorization. It was the kind of connection I hadn't realized I was missing. He saw strengths in me I hadn't recognized myself. My patience, my willingness to learn, my steady hand with a saw, eventually, and I saw the resilience, kindness, and quiet dignity in him. The shed became a symbol of this unexpected bond, a structure built not just of wood and nails, but of shared stories, quiet understanding, and mutual respect. As we worked, the boundary between teacher and student blurred, evolving into a partnership where we both learned, both contributed, both found something we needed in the scent of sawdust and the rhythm of shared work. The most unexpected part wasn't the shed getting built, but the relationship blossoming beside it, quiet and profound under the summer sun. The climax of the project, and in many ways, our shared journey, arrived on a hot afternoon in late July. We were installing the door, a beautiful old thing George had salvaged and painstakingly restored. It was the final major piece of the structure. Fitting it required precision, patience, and teamwork. The air was thick and still, the sun beating down relentlessly. We worked steadily, sweat dripping, communicating with economical words and gestures honed over weeks of collaboration. George held the door steady while I carefully aligned the hinges, drilling the pilot holes exactly where he indicated. My hands were surprisingly steady now, confident. As I secured the last screw, George stepped back. "All right," he said, his voice slightly hoarse from the heat and dust. "Let's see if she swings true." I pulled the handle. The door opened smoothly, silently, perfectly balanced on its new hinges. It felt momentous. We both stood there for a moment, looking at the open doorway, the cool shadow inside beckoning. George turned to me, a broad smile lighting up his face, crinkling the corners of his eyes. "We did it, Sarah. We actually did it." A wave of emotion washed over me. Pride in the work, gratitude for his guidance, and a poignant sense of accomplishment that felt deeply personal. "We did," I echoed, my voice catching slightly. "Thank you, George, for everything, for teaching me, for your patience, for just being here." He looked at me, his expression softening. "The pleasure was all mine, Sarah. Truly, you brought this old shed back to life. And maybe," he added, his gaze meeting mine with unexpected intensity, "maybe you helped bring this old carpenter back to life a little bit too." There it was, the unspoken truth of our shared experience, laid bare in the heat of the afternoon. It wasn't just about wood and nails. It was about connection, purpose, about finding value in unexpected places. My eyes welled up, a mixture of joy and a strange, sweet melancholy, Perhaps for the project ending, perhaps for the sheer unexpectedness of the bond we'd formed. He saw my tears, and naturally, respectfully, he simply placed a calloused hand gently on my shoulder for a brief moment, a gesture of solidarity, of shared understanding. It wasn't romantic or possessive. It was profoundly human, acknowledging the depth of the moment, the work done, the connection made. "Martha would have loved this," he said quietly, looking around the transformed space. "She'd have loved what you've done here." In the weeks that followed, I painted the shed a soft sage green, planted climbing roses nearby, and furnished the inside with a small table, a comfortable chair, and my gardening tools, neatly hung on hooks George had helped me install. It was exactly as I had envisioned, my little haven. George came by occasionally, ostensibly to check on the roses or drop off more vegetables, but really, I think, just to see the finished product being used, to share a cup of tea in the space we built together. Our conversations continued, easy and familiar, but the dynamic had subtly shifted. We were no longer just teacher and student, or nephew's wife and uncle. We were friends, true friends. Mark loved the shed, genuinely impressed by the transformation, and I think quietly proud of me. He even spent a few evenings out there with me, just talking, perhaps seeing the tangible result of my efforts, seeing the collaboration with George, had shifted something in his perception too. Our communication seemed a little easier, a little more open. Looking back, asking George for help was one of the best decisions I ever made. It wasn't just about fixing a dilapidated structure. It was about fixing something within myself I hadn't even realized was broken. I discovered a competence I didn't know I possessed, found a voice I hadn't been using, and forged a connection that enriched my life in ways I could never have predicted. The experience didn't create conflict. It created understanding. It deepened my respect for George, gave me a new appreciation for the quiet strength of intergenerational bonds, and subtly reshaped my relationship with Mark, reminding us both, perhaps, of the importance of shared effort and mutual appreciation. The shed stands sturdy and beautiful at the bottom of the garden, a testament to hard work and unexpected friendship. And sometimes sitting inside, listening to the birds, smelling the earth, I reflect on how asking for help, stepping slightly outside my comfort zone, led not to awkwardness or complication, but to growth, connection, and a quiet, profound sense of self-discovery. It just goes to show, you truly never know what might happen when you reach out.